Welcome to the News9 Mediaverse, and you are watching On Point with me. It is day 3 of the war in Israel. The country was surprised by the swiftness of the attack, but was quickly able to regroup and fight back. But today, in this special show, we will talk about how Hamas duped Israel while it planned its attack. Now, Reuters have reported a number of things as to how Hamas in Gaza prepared. But before that, let me tell you that there is another aspect of this operation, of this entire theatre. And we will take you through that, and that is IRGC, the Quds Forces. And on this show, today I am joined by Aditya Rajkal, Executive Editor, News9 Plus, Sandeep Unithan, Editor of News9 Plus, Dan Pfefferman, Major Israel Defense Forces, Executive Director, Sharaka. He'll be joining us live from Israel. I'm also being joined by Arjun Hardas, India Representative, American Jewish Committee, and Chirayu Thakkar, Doctoral Candidate, International Relations, National University of Singapore. But before that, let me take you through the map. Let me take you through certain details, and let me take you through where the attack has taken place. And what is the special report that has been filed today? So if we play out the map now, before the map, how Hamas has duped Israel. Israel thought economic incentives would work, which means that the Gazans were coming to Israel, they were working. Hamas fighters were trained in plain sight, which means they thought they were training and it was not given due importance by Mossad. Hamas gave impression that it was not ready to fight. For 2 years, Hamas has not launched any operation within Israeli territory. Hamas created a mock Israeli settlement in Gaza. Now, this has been broken by Reuters. Let me credit them with this report. And they said they actually practice. And Hamas refrained from military actions over the last 2 years. In fact, Palestinian Authority was chiding them that why are they sitting quiet. That's another story, another day. And many Hamas leaders were unaware of the plan, which means it was compartmentalized. Only few people were aware of it. And let me take you through the map also after this. And Hamas jammed communications in the same area. Now, if Hamas has jammed communication in some areas, I think this is a new technology they must have developed, or I think it's a. I think they have strengthened their forces. They have strengthened their technical aspect. And number of Israeli forces were below strength in Gaza. Reason? Some of them were redeployed in West Bank because of the settlement tension. So that is another aspect, but debate for another day. So this is also important. Number of Israeli forces were below strength in Gaza and communications were jammed. I think it must have been a big surprise to the Israeli armed forces that Hamas getting to jam their communication. It should have been other way around. Let us show the map. Now, these are the areas, though Israeli forces, one of the press releases said that the fighting in most of these areas are over. But let me tell you that this is Gaza city, tightly packed. Sandeep, isn't it right? Half the size of Mumbai? Half the size of Mumbai. So the attack took place from here. So Jerusalem is here. It's far away, but it's closer to, I would say, Tel Aviv and closer to Jaffa, the port city, the twin city. So attacks were all around these areas. And let me tell you, there's a 3-kilometer buffer belt which the Israelis have been maintaining. So that's also a surprise at how they were not spotted when they were moving through those areas. Next map, please. Let me show you the next map. Now, this map is important because I want to point out this player. We will come to this player at the end of the debate. The player is Iran. This is the player. IRGC, Quds Forces, Jerusalem Force. What role they played? History of Qasem Soleimani. This is a backgrounder, but then this is very, very important. Most of the people think that the theatre of West Asia is only about 3 religions. I think the war within the religion plays a bigger role, which is the Shia-Sunni axis, around which the entire West Asian theatre has been divided. Now, before I start the discussion, this is the Gaza city. Just to give you an example, this is the Gaza area. It's not connected with West Bank. In 1948 it was, but then over a period of time, the both got separated. This is where a lot of people, millions of people live. Now this place is without water, electricity, and it is witnessing the might of the Israeli state because the terrorist attacks or the terror flowed out from the Gaza Strip. Now, a lot of people are saying that there needs to be talk. The position which Hamas has taken, a lot of people don't find conducive for talk. But then, it's history now. The might of the state and the military will first need to clear the areas, ensure that the sovereignty of the state is respected and protected. That's the most important part. Other things will take place later. But then today the story is how Hamas duped Israel, what Israel could have done, and we will be doing this show every day at 7 p.m. I'll be joined by Sandeep and Aditya every day. Do join me, but for today, Sandeep, coming to you first. Do you think that the sort of operation which took place and the details which the Reuters have put out are of exceptional nature, jamming of communication, 1, taking over towns, 2, they created a mock settlement, 3, and they actually practiced their 4, and the Israelis thought that by giving them economic incentives they would do away with war, 5.
Well, Kartikeya, clearly this plan had been in the works for several months. These kind of this ground, air and sea coordinated invasion with a rocket barrage is not something that you can plan overnight. So very clearly Hamas had been at it for several months, and from what we know now, they've displayed a very high level of operational security or OPSEC, which is when you move, you mobilize, you train, you do everything with perfect radio silence. So what intelligence agencies typically look for is what is called chatter. Chatter is that bloom of communications that when a large number of people come together, they generate signal traffic, and that's what's picked up by intelligence agencies. But in this case, they seem to have done all of this training, this mobilization, this equipping in perfect radio silence, and that's where the Israeli intelligence agencies seem to have completely missed their plans. And the Israeli intelligence agencies, as you know, Kartikeya, are some of the most formidable agencies in the world. You have Mossad, you have Shin Bet that does the domestic intelligence, you have Amal, that's military intelligence, you have Unit 8200 which collects signal intelligence. They have a plethora of intelligence agencies, but all of them seem to have missed this massive mobilization, this
even the IRGC
training.
hand, Sandeep, even the IRGC hand, despite the fact that there's a history, despite the fact that the Israelis had been targeting them, despite the fact that they have been battered for 10 years, despite the fact
Kartikeya, you can only assume that the Israeli defense forces might have been looking northwards towards the West Bank, which is where Hezbollah, which is the bigger adversary, trains and mobilizes. It's quite possible that they were looking at Hezbollah and they completely missed the smaller guys, Hamas in Gaza. And that is from where this ground-based invasion was launched, stretching out to 40-50 kilometers, spreading outwards from Gaza and hitting something like 22 locations and carrying out some of the most horrific terror attacks that we've seen since 26/11 for sure. And my worry, personally, if you ask me, Kartikeya, is the possibility of other terrorist actors elsewhere in the world replicating these kind of strategies that we've seen playing out in Israel.
Aditya, if you recall, the day attack happened, there was a rave party which was happening. The initial casualty took place there. Reuters and AP, other agencies are reporting that 200 people died there. Other 100, they have been abducted there in various tunnels in Gaza. Doesn't it tell us that this maybe the state never realized that they could mount an attack like that? And today they have released the statements 9/11 plus Pearl Harbor together. It's like the worst moments in history. One tells you about the American psyche, the Pearl Harbor, and I think 9/11 is what India endured in 2008.
Kartikeya, what I firmly believe is that both the Mossad and the political establishment in Israel underestimated the capabilities of Hamas and of course IRGC as well, because there is no Hamas here working independently. There is Hamas which is working in coordination with Hezbollah and IRGC, either through waterways or through tunnels or through other ways. They have been receiving not just funding but a lot of military aid that we see in these propaganda videos as well. One visual that I just cannot forget, Kartikeya, is of course of that party. The very first day when this incident happened, we were told that there is a peace party that was underway right in southern Israel, very close to the Gaza Strip. And there were at least a few hundred boys and girls, many of them very, very young, who were partying till early in the morning. And there is this visual that comes to my mind, and perhaps later we can play it as well, of the party happening, people enjoying, drinking, and right when the video is at the party goers and people enjoying, nobody else is looking at the sky, but on the other end from the Gaza, there are these paragliders coming inside, and nobody seems to be noticing that in minutes everything will change. 260 people from that party have died, unfortunately, in these terror attacks. At least 50 to 100 people killed. And 50 to 100 people have been taken away. The hostages, the exact number is still not clear. One of the factions of the Islamic Jihad has said that we have 30 to 40 people. And let's remember that these are not only normal civilians or IDF soldiers. There are children who have been abducted. There are videos of children kept inside small bird pigeons that are viral. There are elderly women. And let's remember, it's not just Israeli nationals. There are French nationals, British nationals, Thai nationals, Nepalese and Irish and others who have been abducted as well. So it's an unprecedented situation. Perhaps in the next few days or weeks, the Mossad, the Shin Bet, and of course the political establishment, starting from Benjamin Netanyahu, and the main responsibility with the National Security Minister and the Justice Minister, will have to look inwards, because it's not just an intelligence failure, it's also that the national resources and the entire attention was towards the huge protests that were underway and taking away the judicial powers with the Netanyahu government. Why was a need for them to divide the society and the country at a time when they are facing national security threats?
Okay, now let me introduce Dan Pfefferman. Thank you so much for joining me from Israel. And I'm also being joined by Arjun Hardas. Arjun, thank you so much. Dan, first to you, the report which has been broken that Hamas was able to jam the communication and there was a mock Israeli, mock settlement, sort of a mock Israeli settlement within the Gaza Strip where they were practicing. Isn't this is an eye-opener that, they were doing it right in front of the security's eye, in plain sight, and they got away?
Yeah, this seems to be a massive, massive intelligence failure on the part of, as your analysts there were saying in the studio, the usually very well respected and formidable Israeli intelligence services. I apologize if you hear jet planes or if you hear booms overhead. I'm sitting only 45 kilometers north of the Gaza Strip, so sometimes you can hear now the fighter jets flying overhead. The intelligence failure is not just in a matter of capabilities, which Hamas and now, as it came out, the IRGC, the Iranian Guard Corps, managed to keep secret from Israeli intelligence services, but it's also what now we're referring to here in Israel as a failure of the intelligence conception. The conception was that Hamas political leadership wants stability, wants quiet, wants economic access to Israeli jobs. Tens of thousands of Gazans were employed in Israel every single day with work permits. Qatar was funneling tens of millions of dollars in suitcases of cash through Israel to Hamas every day. And so the conception was that Hamas's political leadership wanted quiet. It turns out that Hamas's military leadership, led by Mohammed Deif, led by the IRGC, led by Islamic Jihad commanders, wanted something very different, and that was to derail the Saudi peace talks, to derail all of the normalization efforts, to drag Israel into a full-out war. And so the failure on Israeli intelligence was both from a gathering and an analytical perspective, but it was also from a general conceptual perspective. And like your analyst said in the studio, completely misunderestimating Hamas's capabilities and intentions.
Arjun, this brings us to another aspect of relationship between the Israel and the Palestinian component. There are two now. There is a West Bank, the one in West Bank, Palestinian Authority. Another is Hamas. That economic incentives work. In this case, the report which has been broken, clearly this sort of economic incentive just didn't work.
Thank you, Kartikeya. I'll actually take everybody back to 2005. 2005 is when Israel withdrew unilaterally under the so-called hardline prime minister, Mr. Security, Ariel Sharon. He unilaterally withdrew from Gaza, handed over the entire Gaza Strip to the Palestinian Authority, withdrew every single Jew from there, including the dead. The graves were dug up and taken out of Gaza and reburied. I've been to some of these places where this has been done. And handed over factories, greenhouses, everything that is the infrastructure was handed over intact to the Palestinians. The first thing the Palestinians did was destroy everything just because it's a gift, it's from the Jews. That was the first thing they did. So the whole concept of, even before that, there were plans of building up factories there so that they would outsource Palestinian, Israeli labor would be outsourced to some of the factories in the Gaza Strip, and they would be able to earn a living. All that has failed completely. 2008, 2007, when the Hamas took over, the first thing they did was fire rockets into Israel. That was the first thing. So therefore, the first clash between the Hamas and the Israeli forces happened in 2008. Because again, the same thing, rocket firing. They did not take in the incentive. They were not interested simply in normalization. And what people seem to forget outside the region, except for those who are watching the region, is the Hamas's charter. The preamble openly says that they are only interested in one thing: the destruction of the Zionist entity. They don't even use the word Israel. They are not interested in talks. They are not interested in negotiations. They're not interested in business. They're not interested in improving the life of their own people. Nothing. Just the objective is simple: destruction of Israel, killing of the Jews, reoccupation of the entire state of Israel, as they call it, Palestine, from the sea to the river to the sea. There is no negotiations. What is the PLO doing about it? Well, probably because of the what is their opinion? Probably because of the Oslo Accords, they have to have some kind of a fig leaf about it. But are they interested in doing business? Are they interested in looking for peace? Are they looking for settling down something, getting some professional working order? It doesn't make a difference to them. If the people, civilians, die in Gaza, as they will in a very large number, it's actually helpful to the recruitment cause by the Hamas. They're looking forward to it, that there will be, as they say in India, Shaheed in our neighborhood in Pakistan, Shaheed and Ghazi. This is look forward to. You're dying while fighting the enemy. So there is nothing that these guys are interested in. There is no incentive, no business thing. They only want death and destruction. If they kill Jews, even better. And there are Jews. It's not just Israelis. The Jews they want to kill. And of course, as Sandeep and others have mentioned, that they have killed Nepalis, they have killed Thai workers, foreigners, who have got nothing to do with this conflict. They would just simply want to kill. I cannot put it more bluntly than that. There is no negotiation with them. It cannot happen. And I would like to remind everybody that even when this bombardment eventually whatever happens in terms of ground operations happens, where is the Hamas leadership? The Hamas leadership, led by Hania, is sitting in Doha. They fly private jets. Billions if they were interested again in doing business, billions of donated dollars are diverted to their personal funds. Where is the infrastructure development? Why do they not have their own power plant? Till today, they still have been, well, at least till yesterday, their power supply has been coming from a power plant in Ashkelon, which, by the way, the Hamas has been bombing regularly, which is idiotic, of course. Water comes from Israel. Food comes from Israel. Why haven't they bothered to build up that kind of infrastructure at all? That nobody questions them. Money just goes into a deep black hole, goes straight into the pockets, and they are sitting like in Doha. Who do we, even when the Israelis attack,
but Arjun,
they attack.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But see, the larger issue is that certain things were happening in front of the Israeli forces. Chirayu Thakur also joins me, doctoral candidate, international relations, National University of Singapore. Chirayu, a very warm welcome to you. But before I come to you, let me play out the bite of the spokesperson who is explaining us the details of the operations of the defense forces. Let me play out that bite, then I'll come to you, Chirayu.
We are in control of the communities. There still might be terrorists in the area. We have fully evacuated 15 communities out of the 24 that are adjacent to the border. We are about to complete, within 24 hours, the evacuations of all the communities near the border. There were 4,400 launches at the Israeli territory.
So the information which is coming is that most of the towns which are near the Gaza block have been cleared. But the fact that the Hamas militants were able to hold on to these cities for more than say 48 hours, because the operation was launched on Saturday, is in itself something which the Israeli intelligence, the army must ponder upon, because this is a war that they have to fight within their own border. And this is not a war they are fighting in Gaza or outside their own country, but within their own border. Chirayu, today we are doing a story on how the signs were missed, the chatter was missed, as Sandeep was saying, and the fact that the communication capacity of the Israeli military was jammed in first 2 hours in couple of areas adjoining the Gaza border. How was that possible unless and until some other country was supplying them sophisticated weapons and electronic equipment? Because the other question which I want to broach is, if you are in war with a bigger neighbor, then you would definitely think that they would be organizing things against you. And how was that missed? You see, if you look at the naval crisis, if you look at the way Iran has played a role with the Houthi rebels, the way Qasem Soleimani was bumped off by the Americans, there must have been resentment in Iran. There must have been pressure on their services to give their principal enemy a hard time. Chirayu.
I think what question you have raised is a very legit one, and it would require a lot of thinking, pondering, going through the evidence, minute details. But you have to remember a couple of things. One, over the last few years, there has been a narrative that Hamas is the weaker side and Israel is the stronger side. And perhaps one can assume that it could have created some sort of complacency on part of the forces, on part of the intelligence. And this is definitely one of the biggest case study of intelligence failures that for years scholars and analysts like us would sit in classrooms and universities and study in defense departments. But more than that, I think right now, the main point that one has to understand is that Iran has, of course, behind the scenes taken the responsibility. Of course, the people have attributed the responsibility to Iran, and Iran has played the role. It has been playing this role not only since today. So you raised the point that this could not have been entirely doing of Hamas. There have been sophisticated instruments and supply and provide. Even apart from the instruments, of course, you can buy some of these instruments in the black market, but the operational training, the sophistication with which this entire operation has been carried out evinces that this has been very long term in planning. This was a hand that was reserved for a long time. And just a couple of hours ago, Jerusalem Post is reporting that now Saudi Arabia has said that Middle East, their signals intelligence is far more powerful compared to Israel. So it is not just Israel. Some next level of sophistication is seen on part of Iran, who has not only trained, planned, funded, and apart from that, they were so successful that they did not let a whiff even to the Americans.
Okay, I think that's a very fair observation. So when we talk about the IRGC hand, Sandeep, how was it missed?
Well, we really don't know as of now, Kartikeya, but the fact is that the Iranian hand has been spoken of, and if there is an Iranian hand, it has to be the Quds force. Now, the Quds force is the elitist of the elite IRGC units. It is a combination of the CIA and the Special Operations Group, SOG. It conducts all of Iran's overseas operations, whether it's in fighting in Iraq, whether it's fighting in Iran, whether it's training, funding the Hezbollah and Hamas, whether it's fighting in Sudan, helping the Houthi rebels, and even carrying out attacks in New Delhi. A couple of years back, if you remember, about a decade ago, there was an attack on an Israeli diplomat in New Delhi, which was traced to the Quds force. Now, this is the external arm of the Iranian state.
They planted an explosive on the side of an Innova.
That's correct. That's sticky bomb, if you remember. Yes. So that's the kind of stuff that they do. They do all the black operations that Iran wants to be done overseas. They carry out all their overseas operations. They train, fund these guerrillas, Houthis, and so this is possibly the force that trained Hamas, prepared them for this operation, and possibly even loaned them some of their military strategists to plan this entire operation. It boggles the mind that a small outfit like Hamas, which has got a military the size of Luxembourg, could mount an operation of this nature, lasting so many hours, a multi-tiered, multi-level operation with, air, sea, land elements. All of this is military planning, and that's where the Quds Force comes in. This is exactly the kind of operation that they specialize in.
The reason why I'm asking this question again, Aditya, it's like purity of operation. It's like pure, simple, neat, no spillage, people working in silos. You do things in front of the adversary. You lull them into confidence. You practice in front of them, and suddenly the strike changes the entire geopolitical nature of the region. It's a different West Asia today.
I think it's probably too premature to say, because you might be experiencing that the geopolitics has changed, but over the next few days and weeks, I think the Middle East is going to change drastically, just as Benjamin Netanyahu and his ministers have been saying. I can't even begin to imagine
Former
what
defense
Israel...
minister is saying that target all the Hamas leaders.
Yes, openly. Not only have they stopped electricity supply, water supply, goods and fuels, but now they are saying that we haven't begun. Whatever is happening because we are protecting our land and our people. We are now going on an offensive mode, perhaps in the next few hours. So there is a mobilization that's happening right now. 100,000 troops have been moved in. There are separate 3 lakh reserve troops that are being called in now from different parts of the country. And we've just received statement from the US National Security Council saying and admitting for the first time that 9 US citizens have been killed in Hamas terror attacks.
I think
so there is an international color to it as well. There are 12 Thai nationals, there are 9 US nationals, there are 10 Nepali Hindus who have been killed, who were University of Agriculture students from Nepal on an exchange visit to Israel.
No, I think the most telling part of your statement was to say that the Israelis are saying that they haven't even begun. Dan, what do I make of it? Aditya is saying that this is what is emanating from Israel, that they haven't even started. So if they have not started now, after pulverizing Gaza, what does it mean? Does it mean hand-to-hand action? Does it mean infantry going inside Gaza? What does it mean if they haven't even begun? Dan?
It's going to take the Israeli leadership, the national leadership, and the military strategists a number of days to decide what is the best course of action, what is the strategic desired outcome. It seems to me, watching now from inside the country, but watching from the side, that this is something that cannot be tolerated. We're at over 800 murdered, at least 150 taken hostage. By the way, Mexican nationals as well have been taken hostage in addition to everyone. Children, elderly people murdered in their homes and in the streets, women raped. This is beyond brutal. So the question is, the whole conception that we had deterrence has failed. And now the question is Hamas cannot be allowed, it seems, to remain in existence. This is not an issue of weakening Hamas. Hamas cannot remain in existence. And now the question is what do you do? When do you do it? The Israeli military is obviously infinitely more powerful than Hamas. Your analyst Sandeep was saying Hamas is not an especially large military. We have to look at a number of things. First of all, Hamas is 100% focused on threatening Israel. It cannot defend against Israel, it can only threaten Israel. While the massive Israeli military has to look at Hezbollah, which is even bigger and more sophisticated to the north. It has to look at the Syrian military, it has to look at Iran and its various activities, and it still has to be prepared for the distant but possible events that maybe one day something could happen with Egypt and Jordan, who used to be conventional enemies of Israel. So the IDF underestimated the Hamas threat. It did not have the proper resources or the attention span. And now the question is what is Israel going to do?
Absolutely.
It's not going to rush into anything. It cannot rush into anything. The targets now that we see on Gaza are pinpoint strikes on buildings in which they are telling civilians to clear the areas before. They are trying as best as they can, and I've seen this from the inside, to avoid civilian injuries. This is exactly the opposite of Hamas, who seeks out civilian deaths, their own and Israeli. And the question is what? I will not be surprised if we see continued massive airstrikes followed by a ground invasion. But this is a big question. It's going to take a massive Israeli commitment. It's going to take a regional commitment. It's going to take a lot of international support for such a move. And this is not something that Israel can just rush in to do overnight. As I said at the outset, the Israeli conception was that Hamas wants quiet and stability. And this is clearly not the case. And so now there has to be an entire rethinking, not just of security, but also of the big strategic plan that Israel has to have vis-a-vis Gaza.
Dan, my colleague Aditya Rajkal wants to ask you a question on the same issue. Aditya, please.
Dan, if I can come to you, we've just received a statement from the IDF saying that apart from sirens going all across in Gaza, now there are sirens buzzing off all across Jerusalem and particularly in the northern Israel territory. And we've also confirmed that the Israeli IDF helicopters are now striking within the Lebanese territory to the provocations that have happened through the day. Are you expecting a full-fledged two-front war situation right now? How does one deal with such a situation? And what is likely to happen in the next few days?
That is always the concern, and that is exactly Hamas's strategy. Hamas's strategy, we cannot talk about capabilities. I'm going back to an earlier point made, and then I'll connect it to this point. The international understanding of war is that the weaker side can never be the aggressor, because why would the weaker side attack someone who is clearly more powerful than them, knowing that there is absolutely no way they can win? And this is the problem when dealing with such jihadist elements like Hamas, and they are a jihadist element. They do not have rational calculations. They know they cannot defeat Israel in any kind of way. What they want to do is create such a shock value in Israel to goad Israel into an onslaught on themselves that will instigate and rile up all of the forces in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, drag Hezbollah into the war. We know now that Iran was involved in this, and Iran fully controls, of course, Islamic Jihad in the Palestinian territories, but it also fully controls Hezbollah, and it has other proxies in Syrian territory on Israel's northern border. So what we're seeing now is an attempt to goad Israel into a multi-theater war. And this is one of the worst case scenarios that the Israeli military trains and prepares for is how do you deal with Hezbollah on the northern border, possibly other Iranian proxies on the Syrian border to the northeast, Hamas and Jihad in Gaza, terrorist attacks coming from Hamas and Jihad, and maybe ISIS operatives in East Jerusalem and coming from the West Bank. This is the all-out scenario that Israel trains for and has to deal with. It'll be disastrous for Israel. Unfortunately, it'll be even more disastrous for those areas in which this violence is coming from. And what we need here is the full weight of the international community, and starting with, hopefully, our new friends here in the Middle East and North Africa, the Abraham Accords countries, Saudi Arabia, but the entire international community showing absolutely no patience for these attacks on Israel, giving Israel full political support, if needed, military support, to make sure that this will not be tolerated, that Israel will be completely supported in its efforts politically and militarily. And that is the way to mitigate this, because the Israeli strikes on these territories, Israel is now dealing from a place that we have absolutely no choice. And these places will unfortunately be sent back 50 years, 100 years in their infrastructure, and this was not in any way a war of Israel's choosing.
Okay, these are the visuals which we are playing on the screen are from the Gaza Strip. This is the Islamic University of Gaza. Most of these visuals that we have put on here have been provided by IDF through their handles. So these visuals are real. These visuals are not part of the social media handles which come. These are visuals. Arjun, when Israel says that they haven't started, what's your take one? And do you think that this conflict has the capacity to suck in the neighborhood? Do you think this is a possibility?
To a large extent, yes. We frankly don't know what's going to happen, because when it says we haven't even started, that's pretty clear that this is not going to be yet again another repeat of what happened in 2008, 2012, 2014, 2000, God knows how many times, and the last was 2021. that there's going to be a war, there's going to be a conflict, there's going to be exchange of missiles, there's going to be airstrikes, there's going to be rockets, and then there'll be a ceasefire with thanks to the Egyptians and others, and things go back to normal. This is not going to be one of those situations. How they haven't even begun to start because they're not even they didn't plan for this kind of a thing, this kind of brutality to happen. If it was a normal military to military, so to say, uniform to uniform kind of a thing, it would be different. So what they have in mind, obviously we cannot predict, but this is not going to be, and if I can venture a guess, completely out of the blue, if I can venture a guess, I expect there to be a permanent military presence inside Gaza, Israeli military presence inside Gaza, with the people more or less permanently under martial law. That's my personal guess, not professional. After that, it's a question of how will it draw in the neighbors. Egypt, you saw what happened. Day before yesterday, where this two tourists were killed. Thanks.
Yes,
you saw that happen. That was. But the neighbors are not stupid. They have also under consideration neighbors. You're talking about the biggest two neighbors, which are Egypt and Jordan. They're not going to ruffle the thing. They know they cannot get involved in this directly because it will affect their stabilities as well. Their stability, if they bring in, and both countries have done a lot to make sure that this kind of radical Islamic organizations, whether it's the Islamic Brotherhood, etc., in both countries, are kept down. So they are not going to allow this kind of a thing and get rhetoric and then get drawn into a conflict with Israel. That's not in their interest. It could have happened maybe 20, 40 years ago. It did not happen. They're not stupid like that. The rest of the neighbors you're talking about, Lebanon, they are pretty much weak. They've got no authority on their own. Hezbollah does what it wants on the border. They're unable to stop anything that the Hezbollah does, and that's a fact. Other side is Syria, the fourth country. They are in a completely basket case. So they don't have a central authority. They don't know what's going on their own. They can't control anything. Damascus, what is the president doing? Nobody knows except himself, probably. So the neighbors, are they going to get drawn in? No, they will try and settle the issue on their own, but only in direct conversation with Israel. It's not going to be a peace now, let's have a ceasefire, both sides should relax, should back down. No, it's no longer. They understand that the severe anger in Israel, and it is severe anger. Military deaths happen in every country, but civilians to this extent, it's almost 1,000 civilians getting killed. By the way, the largest number of Jews killed in one day after the Holocaust, in the Second World War. So this kind of a death toll is not going to be just passed over. This is not something which, and quite rightly so, that the whole situation has changed. This is going to be a new Middle East. Okay. Whatever is going to come out of it, and it's going to be in what Israel wants to do, how it wants to do for its own security, and everybody will have to fall in line. There's no choice in the matter.
Arjun, Sandeep has a question for you. Sandeep. Okay. Sandeep, you have a question?
Major Pfefferman, this is Sandeep Unitan. Just a question for you. When we were talking about this multi-front war, my thoughts went back to October 1967, where Israel defeated a coalition of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. I don't think there's any country in the 20th century that's defeated 3 simultaneous assaults from 3 different directions. What are your thoughts? I mean, do you think Israel lacks the combat power that it did way back in 1967 to fight 2 non-state actors? Or are there other forces at play here?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And once again, this is not a question of capabilities. If we're looking at the capabilities of the Israeli military versus that of Hamas and Hezbollah, there's no question that Israel vastly outweighs them. It's a question of intentions, aggressiveness, and what it means to defeat an enemy in 21st century warfare, especially an enemy who is willing to watch their entire nation, their entire people be slaughtered so they can achieve a social media victory. If we go back to 2006, the Second Lebanon War, Hezbollah's capabilities in no way match Israel's capabilities. The question is Israel willing to massacre hundreds of thousands of civilians to achieve its goal? No. Israel is, despite international criticism, Israel is incredibly cautious and aware of harming civilians, while Hamas and Hezbollah are more than happy to sacrifice their own civilians, certainly their own fighters, but their own civilians, in order to score PR victories against Israel. In the past, one could threaten the capital of a country, and that country's survival as a functioning country would be enough for it to admit defeat in a war. Hamas and Hezbollah and Jihad and others are not willing to admit defeat at any cost. And so the question is not one of capabilities. Israel certainly has the capabilities. It's what do you have to do in order to achieve that? And here I'm afraid I have to agree with the previous gentleman from the AJC, Arjun, thank you, with the previous gentleman's statement, in that we might not see another option, but Israeli forces going in tunnel by tunnel. Let's keep in mind, Hamas learned from Hezbollah. Both of them have massive series of tunnels. Billions and billions of dollars in foreign aid to Hamas were channeled not to building infrastructure and hospitals and schools, but to underground tunnels. That's where the Hamas leadership is hiding right now, not letting the civilians go there. They're letting only Hamas leadership hide in the tunnels like cowards, while the civilians are the cannon fodder for their PR efforts. Hezbollah will do the same thing, and so they can survive physically the war for weeks at a time, shooting rockets indiscriminately at Israeli civilian populations, hiding in the tunnels. The IDF might have to go in on ground with armored vehicles, house to house, tunnel by tunnel, and retake, physically retake these areas. And there may not be another way around it. If that is the case, of course, the airstrikes are going to be very heavy, pinpoint, but very heavy. But again, the Hamas and the Hezbollah fighters hide underground.
Then, Israeli military has confirmed action in Lebanon.
Yes.
They have confirmed action in Lebanon. It
Yes,
means
I'm
that they are
getting those
operating in the
updates as
northern
well.
front. As we started, as we discussed at the start of the discussion. It means that the northern border is live.
It means it's live. I'm still waiting to see, and I hope that Hezbollah decides to show restraint here. Of course, it's not Hezbollah; it's Iran working through Hezbollah. You can hear now once again the jets flying overhead here. Right now, they are poking the bear, so to speak, trying to instigate Israel into opening up a second front on the northern border. That'll be disastrous for us, but more so for them. And I hope in the next hours, in the next days, that is a front that remains very limited and does not develop into a full a combat front for Israel.
Chirayu, when Israel says that they haven't even started, are we looking at the possibilities of more clandestine action of Israel in other states? Why are we thinking that, when we say that we haven't even started, is within the boundary of Israel, Sorry, I'm citing the example of Munich. It didn't, Munich didn't happen in the, within the borders of Israel. It was all about Europe. Can you unmute yourself? Chirayu, can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Hi. Yes. So I was trying to say that, moving on, there are 2 or 3 major variables which needs to be looked very closely. And the first one in itself is what goal Israel sets for itself. We have seen a lot of comparison made with 9/11 and what happened after 9/11. Prompt action was necessary. Action was necessary, and this kind of thing should not go unpunished, especially if a state is concerned. They have the right to retaliate. But the question is, what happens after this? How do they set the goal? Because if it continues beyond a certain point, the initial sympathy and support that it has, it's going to gradually peter out. The second aspect is that the operational space that IDF has right now is one of the most condensed places with civilian density. Now, if in this kind of urban warfare, it is bound to happen that there will be lot of civilian casualties. And moving into this, if this war gets prolonged aimlessly without specific neat goals, of course, clearing out Hamas is one very huge abstract goal, but specifics would be very important moving ahead. If this war gets prolong, especially without very specific goals, then there is a chance that there is a reversal of sympathy, especially with urban warfare, civilian casualties, and more pictures on the other side. More and more international support might be dragged gradually. So if you ask me, this war, the specific aspect that I would be looking into is what goals Israel set for itself, and what specific goal it sets itself, and how it's going to play out on the ground.
I think the bottom line is, before I close the show, is the time, because this is not the Russian theatre. This is not like that. So there will be time which the Israel will need to factor in. There are other things which we can't decide in, pre-guess for the state of Israel, because that's what it's like thinking out of the box. The action is there where you think it's least likely going to be, which actually Hamas ended up doing in the south of Israel. So this was our special edition on point on Israel, and our coverage will continue through the week, taking you through the various facets, because it's not only about, and this is not about one part of the Israeli theatre. For example, the visuals you see on your screen is about the airstrike which took place in Lebanon. So these are the latest visuals, and the Israeli helicopters were pressed into service. So it's an ongoing war. Once the strategic objectives are met, or till the strategic objectives are met, I think the military action will continue, whether within the borders of Israel or outside, depending what Israel decides are its strategic and political objectives. When they are met, the action will be over.
He thought he could outlast us. And 1 year later, the evidence is right here in this room.
Who will blink first?
So far from preventing the expansion of NATO, Russian actions have actually resulted in the expansion of NATO.
It's a mess for Russia, and it's a mess for the Western world, for NATO and the United States.
Putin is a dictator, and if he loses, that means the end of his regime, and probably of him personally. So he has to keep going.
Year 2, no end in sight. Streaming now.